Hey everyone, so today we are going to be covering the introduction to Chapter 1 as well as Lesson 1.1, Analyzing Categorical Data. The introduction just basically is about vocabulary. So if we're talking about statistics, it's just the study of data. The great thing and the thing I love about statistics is you see it everywhere. It is probably one of the most used maths in the world. You see statistics about the coronavirus all over the news. You see DHEC putting out different statistics, and you see baseball statistics, basketball statistics. You see them everywhere. Data is just the information collected. Um, could be categorical, could be numerical, or qualitative and quantitative. Um, and then data analysis is the process of organizing, displaying, summarizing, and making inferences from data. Just think about analyze. Those are the steps when you analyze something. Descriptive statistics, it sounds just like what it is. You're just describing and organizing and summarizing the data. You're not making any generalizations about the data because it's just descriptive. Inferential statistics, it involves making generalizations from a sample to a population. So you're making inferences about what's happening within the sample, and you're kind of putting it towards the population. Population is the entire group of interest. An example here would be all high school students in the United States. That would be a population. Usually when it comes to population, you know it's a population when it says all in front of it. Now, if it has a specific number, it's usually a subset of the population, so a sample of it. An example here would be 800 high school students in the US. So you're taking a sample of all of the high school students and just taking a sample of 800 of those. It makes no sense we can't study an entire population, so that's why we do samples. And samples are selected for study in some prescribed manner. And we're going to talk about all those different ways that we can study samples. And then a variable or variables are any characteristics of an individual or object, basically what we're studying. There are two different types of variables. We have categorical and numerical. Categorical identifies basic qualities or differentiating characteristics of the population. Categorical is just like it sounds. It's categories. It's qualitative data. Numerical, I think about number. It's observations or measurements that take on numerical values. And then there's this little note here. It makes sense to average these values. You have to make sure that you can average those values before you say it's numerical. Okay? And you'll see that more when we talk about these examples. There are two different types of numerical variables. We have discrete, which is a listable set of values, and it's usually a count of values. So if I can count something, say how many times you've been out of the country, you aren't going to say you've been out of the country 1.25 times. You're going to say you've been out of the country 2 times. So it's a listable set of values. It has like a fixed set of values. Continuous is data can take on any values in the domain of the variable, and it's usually measurements. So you have this interval of numbers. Usually measurements, because when you think about height, when you think about weight, when you think about length, I mean, you can have 1.2759 inches or whatever. There's no fixed decimal in there. Okay, and so let's look at some examples. Let's identify the type of variable. So number 1, the income of adults in your city. Well, we know income is a number, okay? And we can average those numbers, so it is numerical. And it is also discrete, okay? Because there's a fixed decimal there. I mean, you can't have 0.759 cents. So there is a fixed decimal. So it's count. The color of M&M's candy selected at random from a bag. Color is not numerical, so that is categorical. Number 3, the number of speeding tickets each student in AP Statistics has received. I hope this is 0 for everybody, but we can count those. We can count 0, we can count 1, we can count 2. We can average how many speeding tickets the AP Statistics class has received. So it is numerical. And you're not going to have a half of a ticket. So we do have a fixed decimal. It is a count. So it is numerical discrete. And then the area code of an individual. Now I want to talk about this one because area code is a number. Most of you guys probably have an area code of 864. Okay. I have an area code of 801. I am from Utah, so I have a Utah number. But area code, can I average these? Does it make any sense to average 864 and 801? That's not going to give me anything. So these area codes are actually categories. Okay, we are characterizing where we live, characterizing people based off of their area code. So those are categories. And then the birth weights. Weight is a measurement, so it doesn't really have a set decimal or fraction or whatever. We usually estimate when it comes to weights. So this is numerical, and it is continuous because there is an interval there. Now, analyzing categorical data, we're getting into lesson 1.1. How are your favorite classes related? We can ask that question. We can collect data. And we can figure out if there is an association between favorite elective class and your favorite core class. We're going to collect data. I know we can't collect data here, so I actually use data from last year's AP Statistics class. So they chose their favorite elective first. So art, we had 5. And music, we had 4. PE, we had 8. Foreign language, we had 2. And technology, we had 1. If you add all those up, that gives me 20 students. Okay. I can also take the percentages of these. So art is 25%. Music is 20. PE is 40. Foreign language is 10, and technology is 5%. How many variables? Well, if we're just talking about elective classes here, we just have one variable. And is it categorical or quantitative? There's no numbers associated with PE, music, art, foreign language, and technology. I can't average those, so this is categorical. Now we could go to this little Stapplet.com to enter this class data. We can make a bar graph and pie chart within there, and then we can sketch them. But because you're not gonna have those resources on your test, I want you to know how to make these bar graphs and pie charts from hand, from just the data. So I've already created all of the ones that we're going to look at, and I'm just going to describe them and talk about how I went about creating it. So this first one here, first let's talk about frequencies and relative frequencies. Frequencies are just the counts. So if I'm talking about these counts, here I have 5, 4, 8, 2, and 1. If I am making a graph based off of those numbers here, then that is a frequency bar graph. And right here, you can put number of students or you could put frequencies. So the number of counts. Either way, it doesn't matter. Relative frequencies is based off of percents, and you can use percents, decimals, fractions. You take the numbers that you have up here. So I have 4 in music. I have 20 students overall. So I divide 4 by 20 and I get 0.2 or 20%. Okay, so this relative frequency bar graph is based off of those numbers. Okay, you can title it. I would always title it and make sure your title has something to do with your data. So here we're talking about favorite electives. So I put favorite electives as my title. Make sure you label your x-axis and y-axis. Here are my electives. I have art, music, PE, foreign language, and technology. And then over here, you can also put frequencies. I said that, but I put number of students, however many students like those electives. And then when you create your bars, notice how I have spaces in between all of my bars. Okay, with bar graphs, always have spaces. And then I always like to create my bars and I like to put the number above them so that I know exactly where they belong and where they are. Now, if you look here at the relative frequency graph, I labeled my axis, I labeled my my y-axis, and I labeled my x-axis. But then I did it by the relative frequency. So I did it as decimals. So art was 20.25. And you can put that above here, 0.25. Music was 0.2. PE was 0.4. Foreign language was 0.1. And technology was 0.05. So you can put those above there so you know exactly where it's going to and what it's supposed to show. And then we have a pie chart. Pie charts are based off of percentages. So if I add all of my percentages up, I should get 100. If you don't, you know you did something wrong. Okay, so 25 plus 20 is 45. I have 85, 95, and then 100 right here. And so they do equal 100. So I can create a pie chart. The easiest way to do it is to look for fractions that you know. So the first one I created was art because it's 25%. I know 25% is a fourth of the pie. So that was the easiest one to create. And then I know that music and technology also equal 25%. So I cut this little part out right here, and then I gave 5% to technology, and I gave music 20%. And then the last part was 50%. We have 40% in PE, and foreign language had 10%. So you cut those accordingly. Try your best to make it look exactly like it should, but always put the percentages in there so you know exactly what it shows. Okay, so sometimes it is helpful to investigate more than one variable. Usually I'd have you come to the board and mark where you belong, whether you like math or English better based off of your elective, but we can't do that right now. So I already have the data in here from AP statistics from last year. So if we look here, the percentage of all students who chose PE. If we look here, we have 5 and 3, which is 8. 8 students chose PE, and we have 20 overall. So 8 divided by 20 is 40%. Okay, the percentage of all students who chose math and chose art. So here I have 4 students in math and art. So I have 4 divided by 20, which equals 20%. So then the last one is the percent of students who prefer math. So let's think, Who all prefers math? Let's count those up. We have 4, 8, 13, 15, 16 students that prefer math. Okay. And then that chose technology out of that 16. So I have 1 divided by 16, and that gives me, I think it's 6.25%. Okay. Now, how many variables does this table have? Well, first I started out with electives, and now I also put in core classes. So I have 2. That is electives and core. Now, are we talking about categorical or quantitative? Quantitative is just numerical. I think about it with this N right here. It's for number. So this is categorical. We have no numbers that are my variables. Okay, so now we are going to create a side-by-side bar graph and a segmented bar graph. Now, I already created those, so I'm just going to talk about them. Here we have the side-by-side bar graph. Now, this is based off of the core classes. So here, down here is my core classes. I have math and I have English. If I look back up at my numbers, out of math, I have 16 that were a part of it. And then I'm going to take each number that I have, so art has 4, and I'm going to divide that by 16. Okay, so 4 divided by 16 gives me 25%. Okay, and if I look down here, art has 25%. Okay, music. I have 4 out of 16, which is again 25%. If I look down here, I have music as 25%. PE has 5 out of 16. That turns out to be about 31.25. I have it written over here, 31.25%. So I estimated about where that would be. Foreign language is 12.5%, and then technology is 6.25%. So these are based off of math as a separate one from English, okay? I know some of you will try to do out of 20 students. Do not do out of 20 students. Separate them, okay? Math is only out of 16 students. English is only out of 4 students, okay? So if I look over here at English, art had 1 student out of a total of 4. So that is 25%. And then PE had 3 students out of 4. So that's 75%. Then the other ones had nothing. So you just don't put anything there. Okay, so that is a side-by-side bar graph. Make sure you put your y-axis and your x-axis. What do these represent? Here, my x-axis represents my core classes. And then on the side here, my y-axis represents percentages. So 10%, 20%, and so forth. Here is a segmented bar graph. It's going to be out of 100%. And you are just going to create bars that are at 100% and then section off based off of how much percent it is. So art had 25%. I'm going to start at 25%, create a line, and then there's my art. And you're going to put the percentage within those just like you do the pie charts. Okay, music represents another 25%. So if I have 25% right here, I add 25%, that gives me 50%. So that's where my next line goes, and that's music. Okay, and then PE represents 31.25. 31.25 plus 50% is 81.25. So that's about 81.25. Again, make sure you put your percentage there so you know exactly what it is. And then so forth. You do the same thing with English. You can just transfer this data 25% over 75%. English is really easy when it comes to this part. Okay, so that is everything on categorical data and how to analyze it, how to create graphs. We're going to focus mainly on pie charts and then bar graphs. Within bar graphs, you should know how to do a regular bar graph a side-by-side bar graph, and then also a segmented bar graph.